For 6 years, Emma Blake cleaned the same mansion every morning before sunrise. She polished the silver, folded the laundry, changed the sheets, and carried breakfast upstairs to a dying old woman who treated her with more kindness than anyone else in the house. To everyone else, Emma was just the maid. Invisible. Quiet. Replaceable. But on the day Margaret Whitmore died, the whole family gathered in the mansion library to hear the will. Her son Richard expected the house. Her daughter Caroline expected the money. Her grandchildren expected the jewelry, the cars, and the paintings. Emma stood near the door in her black uniform, holding a tray no one had asked for. Then the lawyer opened Margaret's final letter. The room went silent. Because Margaret had left the mansion, the fortune, and one locked blue bedroom to Emma. Richard laughed first. Caroline called it impossible. Then the lawyer read one final sentence. Before anyone throws Emma out of this house, tell them who she really is. Emma dropped the tray. Because for 28 years, she had believed her mother abandoned her. And now, in a room full of strangers who hated her, she was about to learn that her whole life had been stolen before she could even remember it. Emma Blake knew how rich people looked at silence. They mistook it for weakness. That was why she had survived 6 years inside the Whitmore mansion without becoming bitter in public. She knew when to lower her eyes, when to nod, when to pretend she had not heard cruel things said in rooms she was cleaning. She knew that people like Richard Whitmore never whispered because they had never needed to. His sister Caroline was worse. Richard insulted people like he was signing papers. Caroline did it like she was adjusting flowers. Emma, the guest towels are wrong. Emma, don't use that staircase. Emma, please remember you are staff, not family. The word family always made Emma feel something sharp behind her ribs. She had grown up without one. Her childhood began in a small state home where every girl learned not to ask too many questions. Her file said her mother had left her at a clinic when she was 3 weeks old. No father listed. No relatives. No photograph. Just a name written in blue ink. Emma Grace Blake. The Grace had always felt like a joke. By 30, Emma had stopped searching. She worked 2 jobs, rented a tiny apartment above a bakery, and told herself that some people were not meant to have a past. Then she answered an ad for a live-in housekeeper at the Whitmore estate. That was how she met Margaret. Margaret Whitmore was already ill when Emma arrived. She was 82, thin as paper, with white hair braided over one shoulder and eyes that seemed to see too much. The first morning Emma brought tea, Margaret looked at her for so long that Emma checked her uniform for stains. "What is your name, dear?" "Emma Blake, ma'am." Margaret's hand trembled around the cup. "Emma," she whispered, as if the name hurt. After that, Margaret asked for Emma every morning. Not Caroline. Not Richard. Emma. She asked Emma to read old novels aloud. Asked her to open the curtains facing the garden. Asked whether she preferred roses or lilacs. Sometimes she asked strange questions. Did you ever have a blue blanket as a child? Do you like music boxes? Have you ever been told you have Whitmore eyes? Emma always smiled politely, because old people sometimes spoke to ghosts no one else could see. The family hated how close they became. Richard warned Emma once in the hallway. "My mother gets attached. Do not mistake her loneliness for importance." Emma answered, "I never do." But she did. Not because she wanted money. Because Margaret looked at her like she had been waiting. On the last night of Margaret's life, she asked Emma to sit beside her bed. Rain tapped against the windows. The mansion was quiet. Margaret's children had gone home after arguing downstairs about doctors, expenses, and whether the estate should be sold. Margaret reached for Emma's hand. "I should have found you sooner," she whispered. Emma leaned closer. "Found who?" Margaret's eyes filled with tears. Before she could answer, Richard entered the room. His face changed when he saw their hands touching. "Emma, leave us." Margaret gripped her tighter. "No," the old woman said. Richard walked to the bed and smiled the kind of smile men use when they are furious but still want witnesses to think they are gentle. "Mother, you're tired." Margaret looked at Emma. "If anything happens," she whispered, "do not let them open the blue room without you." Emma frowned. "What blue room?" Richard stepped between them. "That's enough." The next morning, Margaret was dead. By noon, Caroline had already asked Emma to pack her things. "You were useful to Mother," she said. "But we won't need you now." Emma nodded because pride was expensive, and rent was not. She was carrying a box of cleaning supplies down the back stairs when the lawyer arrived. He looked at Richard. Then at Caroline. Then at Emma. "I'm afraid no one leaves until the will is read." Caroline laughed. Why would she stay? The lawyer opened his briefcase. Because Mrs. Whitmore specifically requested her presence. That was the first time Emma saw fear move across Richard's face. Not anger. Fear. And something about it made her set the box down. The library smelled of leather, dust, and old power. Portraits of dead Whitmores watched from the walls as if waiting to see which living relative would disgrace the family next. Richard stood near the fireplace with a drink he had not touched. Caroline sat stiffly on the sofa, diamonds at her throat and hatred in her eyes. Emma stood by the door. The lawyer, Mr. Hale, placed 3 envelopes on the desk. "This will was updated 6 months ago," he said. Richard's voice was cold. "My mother was not mentally well 6 months ago." Mr. Hale looked at him over his glasses. "Your mother had 3 independent evaluations proving otherwise." Caroline folded her arms. "Read it." The first part was ordinary. Charities. Paintings. Smaller accounts. Jewelry divided among grandchildren. Then Mr. Hale paused. "To my children, Richard and Caroline, I leave what they valued most from me, my name. They used it well enough while I was alive." Caroline gasped. Richard's jaw tightened. Mr. Hale continued. "To Emma Grace Blake, I leave Whitmore House, the remaining estate holdings, and all personal documents contained in the blue bedroom." The room exploded. Caroline stood. "Absolutely not." Richard turned on Emma. "What did you do to her?" Emma stepped back. "Nothing." "You expect us to believe our mother left everything to the maid?" Mr. Hale lifted the final envelope. "There is a letter." Richard reached for it. Mr. Hale pulled it away. "Not to you." He turned to Emma. Her hands went numb as she took it. The envelope was addressed in Margaret's weak handwriting. "For Emma, if I fail to tell her myself." Emma opened it slowly. "My dear girl. You were never supposed to grow up without your name." The sentence blurred. Emma blinked hard and kept reading. "You were born in this house on a stormy night 28 years ago. Your mother was my daughter, Lydia. My youngest. My bravest. The one your Uncle Richard said had embarrassed the family because she loved a man with no money and no famous name." Emma stopped. Her breath became shallow. Caroline whispered, "No." Richard said, "Enough." But Emma continued. "Lydia died giving birth to you. I was told the child died too. I believed it because grief made me weak, and because I trusted my own son." Emma looked at Richard. He looked older suddenly. Mr. Hale placed a second document on the desk. A birth certificate. Child, Emma Grace Whitmore. Mother, Lydia Ann Whitmore. Father, Samuel Blake. Emma reached for the table to steady herself. Her whole life shifted under her feet. She was not abandoned. She had been erased. Richard spoke quickly. Mother was confused. Mr. Hale opened another folder. Mrs. Whitmore hired investigators for 6 years. She found Emma through employment records after recognizing a photograph attached to her application. Emma remembered the day she applied. A small photo clipped to a form. Margaret's first stare. The questions about blankets, music boxes, eyes. Caroline looked sick. Richard, what did you do? Richard's face hardened. What father would have done? The room went silent. She was a scandal, he said. Lydia was dead. The baby had a poor father and no future. I arranged for her to be placed somewhere respectable. Quietly. Emma stared at him. I was a baby. You were a problem. The words landed like a slap. Then another voice spoke from the doorway. No, a man said. She was my daughter. Everyone turned. An older man stood in the hall, holding a worn brown hat in both hands. His hair was gray. His coat was cheap. His eyes were wet. Mr. Hale said softly, Emma, this is Samuel Blake. Emma could not move. Her father. Alive. Samuel looked at Richard with 28 years of hate. You told me she died. Richard did not answer. Samuel stepped into the room. You let me bury an empty box. Emma covered her mouth. Caroline sat down slowly, as if her bones had failed. Richard looked trapped now, but not sorry. Samuel turned to Emma. His voice broke. I looked for you until I had nothing left to sell. Emma wanted to run to him. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to be 5 different people at once. Then Mr. Hale placed a brass key on the desk. The blue room contains Lydia's belongings. Mrs. Whitmore wanted Emma to open it first. Richard moved toward the desk. Samuel blocked him. For the first time since Emma had entered the mansion, Richard Whitmore looked at someone poor and stepped back. Emma picked up the key. And when it touched her palm, she understood why Margaret had left her the house. Not as a gift. As evidence. The blue room was at the end of the east hallway. Emma had cleaned every room in the mansion except that one. Richard always kept it locked. He said it was full of mold and old furniture. Caroline said their mother could not bear to empty it. No one had ever mentioned Lydia. Now Emma stood before the door with Samuel behind her, Caroline beside him, and Richard watching from the far end of the hall like a man waiting for a grave to open. The key turned. The room smelled of lavender and thyme. Blue wallpaper. White curtains. A cradle near the window. A music box on the dresser. Paintings stacked against one wall. Baby clothes folded in tissue paper. Emma stepped inside. On the bed lay a photograph of a young woman with dark curls and a fearless smile. Lydia. Emma touched the frame. She looked like her. Not completely. But enough. Samuel began to cry silently. Emma opened the music box. A small melody filled the room. Samuel whispered, she played that when she couldn't sleep. Emma found letters tied with blue ribbon. Lydia's letters to Samuel. Margaret's letters to a lawyer. Hospital notes. Adoption papers signed under a false name. A private agreement arranged by Richard Whitmore. Then she found a videotape labeled, "For my baby, if I don't get to hold her long enough." Mr. Hale had brought an old player at Margaret's request. They watched in the blue room. Lydia appeared on the screen, heavily pregnant, sitting in a chair by the window. She was laughing at first. If this works, and if my mother doesn't throw the camera at Samuel for buying it, hello, little one. Emma's knees weakened. Lydia placed a hand on her stomach. I don't know what your life will be. But I hope you are stubborn. I hope you laugh loudly. I hope you never let anyone make you feel small because they were born standing on a taller floor. Samuel sobbed. Lydia looked at the camera more seriously. And if anyone ever tells you that you were not wanted, they are lying. I wanted you before I knew your name. Emma broke then. Not gracefully. Not quietly. She sank to the floor and cried for the mother she never knew, the father who had searched, the grandmother who found her too late, and the little girl who had spent her life believing she had been left because she was easy to leave. When the tape ended, no one moved. Then Richard said from the doorway, "This changes nothing legally until a court confirms it." Emma looked at him. For the first time, she was not afraid of his voice. "You're right," she said. "It changes something better." She stood. "It changes me." 6 months later, the case became a scandal. Newspapers called it the Whitmore secret. Richard lost his board seat. Caroline gave statements pretending she had known nothing, though Emma never fully believed her. The mansion became a battlefield of lawyers, reporters, and relatives who suddenly wanted to call Emma family. Emma kept none of them close. Except Samuel. He moved into the gardener's cottage because Emma said the house was too big to learn alone. They ate breakfast every morning in the kitchen where she used to stand as staff. Slowly, awkwardly, they became something like father and daughter. 1 year after Margaret's death, Emma opened the Blue Room to the public for one day. Not as a museum. As a warning. At the end of the tour, beside Lydia's music box, Emma placed a sign. Some families do not lose people. They hide them. That evening, after everyone left, Samuel found Emma in the library. "There's one more letter," he said. Emma frowned. "From who?" He handed her a small white envelope. On the front was written, "For Emma, when she knows enough to choose." It was Margaret's handwriting. Inside was one sentence. "Richard was not the only one who signed you away." Emma looked up. Samuel's face had gone pale. Behind them, the music box began to play from the Blue Room. No one had touched it. And that is where the story ends. Not because Emma had learned the whole truth. But because sometimes the first secret only opens the door to the one a family would do anything to keep buried.